Welcome to In This Moment. I'm Janet Stovall, DEI strategist, joined by organizational culture expert Khalil Smith. We tackle the urgent questions in management and inclusion, exploring what's next and what you can do about it today. We're so glad you're here with us. Let's dive in. Hello, we're back, and welcome back to In This Moment. So today, we're going to talk about something that's affecting really everything. The idea is that if you are a company, you are a tech company. Every company is a tech company. Doesn't matter if you're manufacturing, doesn't matter if you're healthcare, everything's driven by tech. And that is it should create a bunch of great opportunities, but it's also creating some problems.
Yeah, and Janet, the problems are where we dig in, right? Because if tech is running the show, which it is, you have to ask, where are the women? And look, this is urgent, right? This is not a thing that we can push off to a later date, nor would we want to. We're seeing STEM jobs growing like crazy, 5 times faster than other fields. But at the same time, we're hemorrhaging talent. And get this, 68% of women with STEM degrees are gone from the field by the time they're 30. That is a problem.
Gone, just gone. And 20% of them get gone like in the first year alone. So this isn't about more women getting into the pipeline because they're getting there. This is about women staying. It's about retention. And that is really a crisis. And it's a really big business risk because when you realize that 75% of all the STEM grads now are coming from Asia.
And that is why we are super excited to have on In This Moment Andrea Mohamed. She's going to help us unpack this. Andrea's the COO and co-founder of QuantumBloom, and her company is all about helping businesses build cultures that actually work in this new tech-driven world.
Yeah, she is like right at the center of this, all the intersection between tech, talent, leadership. So we think she's just the person to talk to. Her whole focus is on how companies can keep talent and keep women and promote women, especially now that everything is so technical.
Yeah, because it's not just technical. Here's the thing. If you're a tech company, and Janet, as you said, everyone is, and you don't have women in leadership, you're already falling behind. You're not just going to be able to compete if you can't solve this problem. So please, everyone, join us in welcoming Andrea to In This Moment.
We are so glad that you're here today. And as we always do on this podcast, we start off talking about what's next as opposed to what's now. So with that in mind, let me ask you, what's next? What do you see over the next 24 months, 18 months, whatever horizon works for you? What do you think is going on? What are the biggest things we need to be watching out for?
Janet, that's such a big question. What's
It's a
not
big question.
going on right now that we should be paying attention to? I think there's a couple things that stay top of mind. I mean, no surprise, AI tops my list, all things AI. The implications of that around new skills, like how is it going to disrupt things? How is it going to change industries? How is it going to create industries? How is it going to displace jobs, make jobs? I think that that's just sort of top of mind for a lot of us. And I think what that means for all of us, wherever we are in sort of AI land, it's like, even if we're not working in that industry specifically or not yet utilizing it, to its fullest, I think we all have to become AI literate. I think that that's just something that these are the times, this is where it's going. You got to get on the bandwagon. I think another thing that I really am paying a lot of attention to is around the overall workforce dynamics, what's happening, right? So you've got retirement cliffs happening in a lot of different industries. I work a lot in semiconductors. That's an industry where about a third of that workforce right now is either retirement eligible or moving toward retirement eligible. There's other industries where you don't see as many people like becoming professors anymore in education. So you've got challenges there. It's like, see also tensions in the overall workforce, whether or not they're generational or geopolitical. So you have generational things going on in the workforce where it's like you have however many generations are in the workforce now. I don't know if alphas are there yet. I don't know when the alpha age, but anyways, you look at least 4 or 5, right? And what are the next generation expecting from their workplace? Are organizations keeping up? How are they managing some of these tensions from generational sort of expectations about what work fundamentally means? And then like the geopolitical tensions around workforce stuff. We are becoming very immigration unfriendly at all different sectors of employment, right? From laborers to our highest, most educated spaces, where we're now not necessarily wanting to accept foreign students into our most prestigious universities. And if we don't accept them, we don't give them those pathways to employment. So I feel like there's like these generational and geopolitical tensions just overall in the workforce. And then I think the last thing that I'm paying a lot of attention to is just like all of this discussion about what's going to be reshored and onshored and what are going to be the industries of the future where people work. There's lots of discussion about, are we going to have a renaissance of manufacturing coming into the United States? It's like, will it be all things? Will it be those things that are really just about economic and national security? So semiconductors, or maybe things like pharmaceuticals or automotives, maybe not making t-shirts or Nike tennis shoes, but it's like, what's going to change the landscape of what jobs are and what will be displaced? AI, the knowledge economy and those types of jobs. What is consulting going to look like? What is law going to look like? So I feel like there's just this confluence of things that are happening right now, right? It's like AI, industries, what are they going to be the dominant places of employment, generational things, and like just this overall like loss of like the most senior, most experienced folks, and what that's going to ultimately mean for organizations in their futures.
Okay, so you do a lot of work in the area of women in technology. So if we have these generational shifts going on, we have people retiring. On the one hand, it might seem that there is more opportunity, more spaces for women to come into. Is that true, or are the forces actually making it tougher for women?
Logically, it should be creating opportunities, but that's not what we're actually seeing. So if you look at um in AI, for example, it's like women have been largely excluded from that ecosystem. Something like, I don't know, less than 20% of the AI workforce is women. And yet there's like new data that came out just recently, an MIT study that said 95% of all AI projects, generative AI projects, are failing. And it's not because of the technology. It's always about those things, the messy things, right? It's like people and process and internal things. And frankly, those I think are creating opportunities potentially for women. We're good at the messy stuff. So logically, some of these things, it should be creating opportunities for women. But then you have the headwinds of what's happening around DE&I blowback, where already it's been very difficult for women to have equal opportunities in male-dominated spaces, and any traction we were getting has been undermined by the new executive order around anything related to DE&I is getting pulled back. It's making organizations nervous. They're, even if they realize the importance of having, you know, diverse workforces, they're nervous about getting in trouble. They're less vocal. We're seeing data around in the US, how many women, how many Black women have left the workforce since January. These are really frightening things. And when you look at the overall need for domestic talent, you look at the education outcomes of women, and that women have been out earning men in getting PhDs since 2005. We have out earned men in getting master's and bachelor's level degrees since the 1980s. And if educational attainment was the pathway to career success, we should be seeing a whole lot more proportionally women thriving in our industries and businesses. And they're still not. And the paths are still riddled with potholes and all sorts of things that without some pretty big changes, I don't see real opportunities presenting themselves for women to kind of come in and be some of the solutions to these big challenges that we're facing. It's like it's going to take some concerted efforts for organizations to recognize their own roles in why women don't want to work for them, their own roles and what's going on with their cultures and how to improve them and those types of things. So I wish that it's like logically, yes, it should be creating opportunities. In reality, I'm not seeing it yet. Not at scale for sure. And in many cases, I'm seeing a regression. backwards.
And the other
So,
thing to me that's scary about that is if you take women out of the workforce now, a workforce that already did not have women in leadership positions, take them out of the workforce now, they're not going to be on the path to leadership. So when we talk about 24 months, I think even further out there, what frightens me is what does this mean for the role of women in leadership in the tech industry? Like you said, like opportunity, AI should have been an opportunity because it was new, right? And we could have rushed into that void. And it's a little frightening that it's not that way. So, um,
well, and
going,
Janet, you say the tech industry, but Andrea, I've also heard you talk before about kind of every company is a tech company now, that
Yes.
everyone is doing work in this tech space. And so, in the next 2 years, what are the biggest tech related challenges facing organizations and how does it affect women in leadership? Because it's not just like farming is now your John Deere tractor has more technology than your car does. And like, it's not segmented in the same way that it was before. So when you talk about STEM and tech, I think before folks thought about a very narrow space. Now we're talking about all these spaces, and you at QuantumBloom have done so much work around women exiting that space because they don't feel welcome, supported, taken care of in that STEM area. But that's now the workforce just in general.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Every company is a tech company. Every company is tech enabled. Even if they're not selling technology, they're using technology. It's like they might, it is inextricable. Like every industry is impacted by technology today, healthcare, finance. And we've seen this, right? How much of financial services is technology? There's some, I'd say maybe laggards in this law, some of these real, consulting, if you're not doing system related stuff. I mean, there are a couple, but even then they're using tools and tech that are specific to their industries and their delivery of products, goods, services, experiences, right? And so, I think, and again, though, it's like every company is increasingly technology. Every company's trying to figure out what to do with AI. Most companies are failing at that, right? Growing exclusion risk if women, people of color are not involved in the development of, I don't care if it's AI technology or any other technology, right? It's like, these are the jobs of the future. STEM oriented things are the jobs of the future, whether it's in healthcare or semiconductors or any form of manufacturing or whatever it might be. It's like, if you do not have a robust STEM pipeline of talent that's diverse, all those products, all those services, all those things are going to be built without the benefit of the lived experiences of those folks, without the benefit of their vantage, when they're testing something, building something, all these challenges. And again, none of this is rocket science. We all know this. So then you go back to why? Why are we still behaving like this?
Yep.
Right. And I
Yep.
think it's like, we know the problems. We could sit here and admire the problems all day. It's just the biggest frustration is the lack of action, or in a lot of cases, sort of this regression backwards.
it's interesting you say that. Somebody said to me one time, technology was the one area where lived experience didn't matter. Somebody actually said that to me. They said, if it's tech, it's just tech. It's neutral. It doesn't matter. Why do you need diversity in tech? And I just kind of sat there for a minute and I said, some things I just don't even bother to answer. Because like you said, some problems, it's like, I don't have the energy to go over this again. But I do wonder if there's an attitude of, do we really need diversity there? Because technology is neutral. I would argue, obviously, that we do.
Nothing's
Yeah.
neutral.
Well, that's
Nothing's
exactly it.
neutral.
Yeah. I mean, you've heard people say the markets are neutral and technology is neutral and all of these things. And then you find over and over again these places that things have kind of woven their way in. But Andrea, one of the things that I know you and Janet had a bit of a conversation about is kind of both the glass ceiling and the glass cliff.
Yeah.
So we've been talking a bit about, potentially women opting out or deciding that's not the right space. But even for some of the women that stay in these roles or do wind up getting roles, there can be the glass ceiling, glass cliff. Can you explain those two a bit? And again, not rocket science, but talk us through like what are the challenges associated with that? Again, to your point, Janet, as we look out 2 years, the seeds we're planting today are creating the conditions where some of these may be even more challenging 24 months from now. So what are the glass ceiling, glass cliff, and what should we be doing to keep an eye out for those?
Yeah, we're in a time of a lot of disruption in a lot of ways. And if the current and the future sort of mimic the past, it's like women get opportunities when there's a lot of disruption. Women get opportunities when it's doing the first, the new, the transformation, some of those types of things. And I think we're in a time of that. Frankly, I have several sort of personal anecdotes of friends of mine who are currently in glass cliff situations. And it's like, it's killing me because it's almost a cartoon with how much it's following the pattern. It's like big disruption in an organization, two high performing women getting opportunities. They're arguably in the two most new critical roles in a reorg, yet they're not reporting directly to the CEO. They're not on the executive leadership team. It's like and they're incredibly talented, and the house kind of had to be on fire to get the opportunity. And these are really tough jobs to turn the ship around. And it's just really, and I think it's like women also need to recognize when they're being tapped for a glass cliff opportunity. I think sometimes we don't even know because we're hungry. Many of us are hungry for the challenge. We're motivated because it's hard, right? And I think we maybe underestimate sort of the need for more supports, the need to have more clarity when we step into these roles, because we just go in and it's like, I'm going to go slay the dragon today. I can do this. Give me the hard stuff because we
I'm
can do more
smart. I'm
things.
talented. I'll figure it out as I go along. I'll win everybody over. I don't need to report to the CEO. I can get this done because I've built a network. And so it sounds like a couple of those elements are, new and disruptive, challenging role. But then the cliff part of it is not set up for success, not given the resources, not supported in the right ways. And so, I think none of us want to say no to opportunities that could stretch us and grow us, but you need that support system in order to be able to say, am I reporting the right places? Do I have the right budget? And I think your point about being able to recognize when you're being almost set up for failure, even if other people aren't intentionally doing it, but if there's a pattern, you have to be able to see that pattern. And that's not to put the ownership on the people that are placed in those positions, but you got to kind of look out and say, it's a trap. Like, I get that this sounds great, but whoa, wait a second. Exactly. Something's not quite right here. And if you can call that out in advance, then even better. But it's not easy, right? When you get that, hey, we want you to be the C something or the VP of this thing. And then all of a sudden you're like, that sounds awesome, but nobody's defined it. Nobody's clear what success looks like. Nobody knows that I'm doing it. I'm not in the right meeting. I've now been set up for failure. And I think we saw this with a lot of DEI positions coming out of 2020, where folks are like, hey, we want you to lead this new team, but you don't have a budget, you don't have a team. It's actually not on the agenda of the CEO, but it's a priority.
Really
so go off and make it happen.
Ready to do it. We're really not ready. So
Yeah. But to your point about women being disproportionately put into those positions, this is one of the things I think that hopefully folks are taking away from a conversation like this is the ability to pick your head up and say, that sounds like a great opportunity, but what about, right? Not yes, not no, but let me ask some more questions. Let me really dig deep. Let me get some of those things in place before I say yes or no.
Well, and unfortunately, many women are so conditioned to be grateful. And I don't think it's just women. I think it's women. I think it's people of color, anybody that's not the dominant group, right? It's like you have this conditioning to be grateful for the opportunity, right? And so you don't finally got the big shot at this title or the thing or whatever. And it's like, and you don't want to then go in with all your demands. Oftentimes those demands are treated differently if they depending on whom they come from, right? And I think about if a woman is presented with a glass cliff opportunity today, one, know that it's a glass cliff opportunity. Two, maybe don't take it, because the more that we play into it, the more that we accept these opportunities rather than the opportunities that are set up for success. It's like, I think that we are in some ways complicit to these systems, right? By us saying yes, we're actually an active participant. And then, and you were talking about this, Khalil, right? It's like demand resources. I'm not taking this without X budget, and I want that budget in writing. I'm not doing this without you and I sitting down to what are the realistic expectations, given that budget, given the resources that you're going to provide, given the timeline, right? That you are co-creating some of the outcomes, right? That they want to see.
And what you're talking about, it makes so much sense, but it's so challenging, right? Because to your point, when you say, okay, I can't do it without these things. And sometimes the answer is, okay, we'll just find somebody else. Right. And then it can feel like you missed that opportunity, or now I'm never going to move forward in this organization. And so that's the challenge to the system, is that the system can almost crush any individual within the system. And so it's, well, if it's not you, that's okay. There are 4 or 5 other people that will take this. And so So we talk so much on this podcast about how do you kind of lock arms with some other people, build your network, collaborate, have your sponsors, so that you may not be the only person saying, but wait a second, is Andrea getting a budget when she takes this role? Because your
Right.
sponsor in that conversation, before you even get tapped, should be the person saying, we think Andrea would be great for this. And they're like, this is a glass cliff opportunity. If we're not giving her budget and we're not willing to put this into this role, let's not open this up. And all of a sudden that gets other people thinking. So it's not putting it only on the individual. But I think that, to your point, we've got to figure out, how do we come together and lock arms? Because if we want the system to be different, we all need to push, right? It's too big a flywheel for any one person. But when we all get behind it, it's like, none of us want to be set up for failure. Okay, how about we stop doing that?
Yeah.
Well, but to that point, and sort of what you're saying too, and Andrea, you were going down there and when you said, just ask the question, is there some way, is there some advice that we can give to those who find themselves in that position, who maybe don't have the strongest network going into it, who don't want to walk away from the opportunity and are really afraid that if they say, well, no, I don't have a budget, I don't have people, so no. Is there some way to ground that argument differently that might work? Or is there something you can do, maybe even to go cultivate a network that you don't have at in the moment, a network in the moment? What can you do other than saying, I have to walk away from it? Or is that just really the only thing to do?
Yeah, I think that curiosity is like amazing, right? Being able to go into any negotiation or anything with curiosity and being able to say, well, help me understand what success looks like to you. And let's get a little bit deeper into why you chose those numbers and what you think are going to be the build up to getting to those numbers and what would need to happen. Like, you can go into those conversations leading them to the point of, well, yeah, these are kind of ridiculous when you help me like unpack what's happening here. And I think those are the first things. It's like, how do you go in and really be collaborative in nature? Curiosity by itself is incredibly collaborative. And you really start to lead that conversation into a place of realism rather than, some hand strokes, and this is one of the things that happens too. It's like you have CEOs, and C-suite executives, and they wave hands and they think stuff can happen because they sit with all this power and whatever. And then things kind of go through the snake body and it's like, and things are coming in politics, and they've moved on beyond some of that. They're not in the day-to-day of that. And so they sometimes, I think, forget on how difficult it is to be the change agent, driving the new initiative, bumping into all of those sort of roadblocks or cultural barriers. And it's like, so how do you help bring the conversation around to realism? But I do think for every woman, it's like we should not find ourselves in situations where we don't have strong networks. We should not find ourselves in situations where we do not have money in the bank to be able to say no to bad deals, right? It's like when they're banking on us not having cards to play. So what do we do before we need them to have our cards and to be like loading our deck, right? And that's something so that you don't feel that you have to be compelled to take an opportunity that's less than great, right? Too often we talk ourselves into it because, well, if I don't take this, there won't be another thing to come. And we have this scarcity mindset. And then the deep, dark inside stuff is like, too many of us don't think we're worth better. So we accept the scraps, right? And so there's oftentimes, it's a combination of sort of motivators that sometimes lead us into these situations where we kind of know better. We know what the thing is, but it's like you don't have your network set up. You don't have a foot sort of in the market to know what's real out there. And you're a little bit stuck to having to, accept what's offered, to be chosen to do something rather than you be the person that's the creator of your own future, right?
Yeah.
But that takes, oftentimes years and years of building yourself up and building your own sort of deck of cards to then have more to play when some of this stuff comes your way. And if you have those cards to play, I did this a couple of times where it's like I played my cards. I had to be willing to walk. But I was being set up. I was in a situation that I was I had a leader who was unwilling or unable, probably a combination of both, to actually support me the way that I needed to given the role that I had. And I did a bold move where I went into my executive vice president's office and I said, I quit this boss. I'm done. It's like I have done everything I possibly can. And the how we are doing this work is killing me. The what we are doing, I'm really excited about and proud about, but the how has got to get better. And it's like, and he is not blocking and tackling when I hit dead ends and need more support. And so, and laid out 3 things I wanted. Oftentimes they don't even know what you want. You have to have that confidence to say, I want these 3 things and give them something to respond to. Give a proposal. It's like if you're presented with a not great glass cliff opportunity, what would make that look great? Hey, I gave some thought to this. It's like, I actually think this opportunity might be more attractive to me or more successful or whatever it might be if we did this, this, and this. What do you think? Right? Give them something to respond to versus just a complaint list. Right.
And Andrea, one of the things, so you're the huge part of the frame that Janet has talked about for this season is, again, the kind of what's next, what's now. So you painted this great frame of you need to have your network before you need it. You need to be building today to understand in 2 years, I may need to leverage some of those folks. If we think about some of this back through the company lens and come back
Mhm.
to kind of the what's now,
Yeah.
what should companies be doing today to make sure that women can thrive and that the companies can actually compete? Because you've given a compelling case for a couple of years from now, demographics are continuing to change, retirement is coming. Some of that is here, but it's coming in 2 years even more than it is now. What are some of the things that companies should be thinking about today and starting to take action on today? And then we're going to ask you a similar thing for individuals, but first start with
Yeah.
the companies and the execs and the leaders.
Gosh. One,
Like, where to begin?
well, I mean, the big broad strokes, it's like make your work environment a magnet for talent. It's like if you create a place that's so positive, that's so collaborative, that's so authentic, that everybody wants to be there, it's like you will have the cream of the crop. You will be able to pick among the best talent, right? And so I think it's like, what does awesome look like?
That's what I was going
And
to
how
ask.
do
What
we
does
get
it look like?
ourselves there? And I think too often it's like there's a lack of recognition for the really reals of what an organization's culture is really like. I think that there's sometimes toxic positivity where they know the really good things and they focus so much on those good things and they neglect some of the things that drive people out of their organizations. I think they need to be ready to really ask and dive in. Why are these people leaving our organizations? When you do exit interviews, is it done by a third party? Right? Is somebody third party looking at that? Are you exit interviewing everyone? Or do
And
you
Andrea, are
find
you
your
saying that you should use a third party to do the exit
Yeah,
interviews? Okay.
yeah, absolutely. Because that third party is going to take it with a different face value than the lens of your existing organization, right? And everybody inside an organization that chooses to stay with an organization often has some level of being bought into that organization's benefits or what's great about it, right? They're no longer objective because they've drank that Kool-Aid, right? And so they could be really too dismissive of counter narratives to what they think is so awesome, right? And so the independentness of like an exit interview being done by a third party, I also think it's like who removes themselves from your interview process. It's like who was invited to something and said, no, I'm not interested. And why did they say no to you? Just doing internal employee engagement surveys and things like that, you are biasing your data set because they are all people who have already chosen to stay with you. Right? And I think that we have used that as that gold standard for it's like, oh, we're doing okay. It's like we've got a 9 out of 10 on employee engagement. We got a 9 out of 10 on culture. Yeah, by the subset of people who chose to stay at your company, right?
Janet,
What about
I see you nodding up and down. What are you thinking?
I think that is an amazing thing to say because you're right. Data is what we always talk about, in this space. And what you're saying too, we need the data. We need the data. We say to companies, get the data. But the question is, what data are you getting? And you're right. The gold standard has been these employee surveys, and there are going to be few people who don't like it, but they're going to be the outliers, and they're probably on their way out anyway. But so are we saying too that to Khalil's question of what should companies be doing now, should they be asking these questions and then building metric systems to figure out if they're doing what they need to do? That seems to be a given.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like, you want, I mean, and again, at the end of the day, you want someone leaving your organization to still be a fan of your organization.
Right.
Right? Like, so it's like you want them to leave because it's like, they decided that they're going to go upskill and do something else, or like, but you want them to have a positive impression. And the reality is like people move around and they may come back. Right. And so it's like there's just, I think, this what data. Yes, we love data. But when we are subsetting into this audience, we ask this thing, and the way that we ask that question, or what we don't ask because we really don't want the answer to it, or
Right.
who we don't ask. It's
Mm.
like I was at an organization for 11 years. Nobody exit interviewed me.
I've never had.
They were
I've
like, we
never
don't
had.
want to know why Andrew's leaving.
I have never had an exit interview, ever. And I've been in this ever, ever. And I always wished I could. And what happens is Glassdoor becomes your exit interview. That's
Right.
exactly what happens. And that happens way, way much. Yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, I think organizations at the highest level, to answer the questions succinctly, they need to work on their environments. They need to become so awesome that everybody wants to work there. And guess what? So awesome is not going to be, it has to be this much money on salaries or the ping pong table in the pizza party, right? It's like what's so awesome today and what people want is respect. It's like they want fairness. They want like the people that do the most, the best work to be the ones that rise. They want zero tolerance for toxic bad behavior. Like there are things that it's like, be better, just be better workplaces, right? And I think there's just too much hesitation to really do the culture, really deep culture work. And because there's sacred cows. I always say culture is like who you hire, fire, promote, and tolerate. And it's because people live your culture, they express your culture. And so the who matters so much. And it's like, and there's so often these mismatches between the things that are on the wall, on their values, and what's happening in reality.
well,
And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, that's fine.
What you're saying is something that I've always struggled with, is this sense of when we tell companies build a culture, we have moved to this argument about build a culture of belonging. And my next book says belonging is bullshit. That's the actual title of it. And the reason that's the title of it is because exactly what you're saying is companies will come and say, okay, we agree with you, Andrea. We want to build an inclusive, tell us what that looks like. And I would argue back that it depends on the organization. Depends on the business you're in, the organization you have, so many things. I think at some point, if an organization wants to build that culture, not only do they have to, change the things they measure, but they have to figure out what does good look like here. And I think everybody wants a benchmark. Everybody wants somebody to give them a playbook. And that requires looking at what's wrong. I mean, only way you know what's good is by saying, well, that isn't. And those are the kind of employee surveys I think we should be doing. Because I agree with you, you build a good culture, but I don't think companies even know what that means.
Yeah. And I think though, like that, there's so much, like I've heard it, like you hear this positivity always from those leaders. Like they have to be the champion they have to be the positive voice, even if the house is on fire. They need to make everybody think like everything is okay, right? It's like there is this role often of those executives that I remember. It's like I used to do speech writing for several executives. And I'd say something with like, a not or a word that's in a negative frame. And I'd always get coached. No, you have to put that in the positive frame. And it was a tactic, right? And I think one of the things, it's like we all know work is messy, things go wrong. We just want candor and transparency about that. We want to know that you're on top of it. We want to know that if we have ideas on how to help, that you welcome it, right? There are things where it's like we don't need to be kid gloved at work.
Yeah, don't gaslight me.
Don't gaslight me. Oh, yeah. I mean, you think about it. Kid gloving is a form of gaslighting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then here's my question, Andrea, because I agree, and I see you both nodding your heads. I want to give what some people may be thinking is the other side of this conversation. And I want to ask you, so when we think about what do employees then need to be doing today? Because I said I would come back to that. So you gave a clear, unambiguous answer
Mhm.
about what companies need to be doing. And I think if I channel some of the executives that I've either heard from or other guests that we've had on, they will say, I'd love to be honest with our team, but as soon as I tell them everything isn't perfect, they jump down my throat. Or as soon as I make a mistake, I'm told that, you're the wrong person. So positivity and keeping things very surface level is the only way to go because you can't misstep. And we raised it before, right? In a lot of different countries, people are looking for simple answers. We're looking for simple politicians, simple answers, simple leaders that just say, we're good, they're bad, everything is awesome, and go. Or everything is falling apart because of that group over there. Those don't feel like the same level of nuance. So both when we think about like, what is the obligation for us as employees? How do we support the messy organizations? But also we were talking a little bit before about building your network and some other things. What are those suggestions that you would give for the individual contributors that are listening to this? What should they be doing today to prepare themselves and their organizations for the future?
I mean, fundamentally, so much of this is like about trust, right? It's like being able to trust intentions and some of those things. I do so much of it though is the leader's tone. I think it's unfair to put it on an individual contributor that they are responsible for sort of the culture of a company from the top down when you think about just power structures. But I do think individuals have a responsibility to be accountable for their work, transparent about their work, communicative about, what things, but I think too, sometimes we all bring our stuff. Here's the thing. I'm going to answer this in a slightly different way as a woman, not as an individual contributor, but as a 49-year-old woman. We bring our stuff into work. Whatever trauma we've lived through, whatever past biases we've had to manage ourselves through, it's like we bring that too. We're an active participant, right? We may or may not be good at managing our own emotions. We may or may not be good at setting our own boundaries and think someone else is going to set those boundaries. We may or may not know what our own value systems are, what our own belief systems are. We may or may not understand why we're in conflict with someone. And usually, once you understand your values and belief systems, you're like, that's because we have a values mismatch. So individuals, and I guess this is for an individual contributor, but I learned this late, right? I had to really get to know myself. We all need to get to this place of self-knowing,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like, and many of us, it's like when you start that journey of self-knowing and radical self-acceptance, I am who I am. I am being who I want to be, like who I am and how I present and they're all in alignment. Like I am living my authentic life. I'm more motivated by internal North Stars than external validation or external pats on the back. If we get to a place where we are individually healed, where we're very aware of and deliberate in our environments and our choices that we're making, right? I think that doing that work, knowing what we bring in, and is what we're bringing in a positive force, a negative force, the only thing we can ever control is ourselves. And once we start to realize that, right, it's like, yes, you want to choose well to have a great environment. Yes, you want to choose a great boss because, this is one of the things, it's like most people join companies and quit bosses. It's like if you are looking for a new job, it's like, who's the boss going to be? Like, and granted that stuff changes, but it's like who your boss is far more important than what company you work at. And we don't often realize that, right? How do we be intentional in navigating our own lives with integrity and clarity and personal awareness and eyes wide open? And it's like, and I think about my own journey of quote unquote healing, right? And it was the school of hard knocks, and building my own sense of worthiness and competence and those types of things. And I think there are things, these are all personal leadership, personal integrity, personally I think if I would have done introspection earlier, analysis of myself earlier. Why am I this way? Why is that a trigger for me? Like the idea of like, why am I like on fire with what just happened at work?
Yeah.
Why? Like if instead of just blame game or shame, like, oh my God, it's like I had this overreaction to this thing and I'm a terrible person and I got to go fix myself now. Like shame or blame or whatever it is. It's like instead, if I stayed in a place of curiosity, what is the thing
Yeah.
that makes me that way? Right. And then if you go to the what is the thing and it's like, what did I bring? What was my role in this dynamic that isn't working out well? And then you say, oh, if I know I can change that. Or maybe it's like, no, that's authentic to who I am and I'm not changing that. They want me to change that, but I'm just not.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let
But
me
I
go
think to your
back.
point, that intention. Sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah.
I want to go back to what you where and kind of bring this around a little bit. Where Khalil, you brought up the point that every company is a tech company. So when we talk about individuals here, very bottom line pragmatic. If every company is a tech company, what do people need to be doing right now? I mean, we hear all the time, you can't run away from AI. So maybe that's one of them. But what do individuals need to do right now, no matter where they are and no matter where their companies are, maybe on that AI continuum? But what should they be doing right now to get prepared for that future that you painted earlier?
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things. One is, I mean, it's rather cliche, but we have to come with a growth mindset. The things we know today might be irrelevant tomorrow. We have to be putting ourselves into systems of learning and being people that are lifelong learners. I think too, right now, and I think this is easier for some and harder for others, but we need to become more system level thinkers. It's like wherever we sit, recognize there are a whole bunch of influences, things that are going to drive or derail or whatever it might be, that whatever part or piece we have in a role, in an organization, like there's a system around that. And the more I think that wherever we sit, recognize that there are interdisciplinary things, that there are all sorts of things around my job, my thing that are relevant, even if I'm not involved in it. And then you start to build more, I think, empathy, perhaps, around other people's jobs, right? It's like that, you think your job is the most important thing and whatever, and it's like whatever, but it's like when you start to think in systems and bigger pieces. And I think when you start to think in systems, it's like it prepares you to move it into leadership as well. Right? When you start seeing the big picture versus my part. And I think there's so many forces colliding in so many ways that we need more of those broad thinkers that can see, they're in their box, whatever it is, and they realize there are 600 other boxes. And you know what I mean? And what container are they in? Right. And when you start to think that way, it sort of changes, I think, your perspective on your work, your stuff. Getting outside. I mean, it's like if you have this job, if you're an individual contributor and you are a coder or whatever, you need to build relations laterally. You need to go have conversations with people who do things very differently than you. You will start to see the role you play in your organization completely differently when you start to see the bigger picture, right? That expansiveness. It's too easy to be like me, my world focused and not necessarily the whole focused. And I think that's hard in some ways. I used to talk about this as like T-shaped people, right? You go deep on something and go wide. I think we just need more people, as we have increasingly technical workers that go deep onto their technology, it's like if we fail to provide the connectors and the people who see the big picture or those that can poke their head up and look around, I think it's just going to be, increasingly a challenge as organizations rely more and more on deep tech people.
And Andrea, if I connect to your two comments, I almost hear you saying, or at least what I'm taking away in part is understand yourself and understand your context or your network or your system.
Yeah.
And so it feels like it's both of those things, like do the deep work to understand why do I respond the way that I do? What are the challenges that I'm having? What are the things that I love about myself that I'm unwilling to change? And if this environment doesn't value those, then I'll find myself an environment that does. And what are some of the things that I would say, you know what, Khalil? Yeah, enough people have told you that's really annoying that you should probably probably stop saying that's just who I am. And then the
Yep.
other piece of this is pick your head up. So put your head down, understand yourself, do that deep work, and then pick your head up and see who's out there. What are the other decisions that are being made? If I'm taking $1 from here, what does that mean for over there? And how do all these things fit together? It sounds so simple when we say it that way, but I know it, to your point, I continue to be on that journey of trying to figure out myself and what I'm good at and what are my values and how do those change at different moments in my life. But I think that introspection is really, really good advice. And then you mentioned before, build your network, and some of that context building and looking around the organization and valuing what other people do is a great way to start to build your network. Because if you're so self-centered, you're not providing value to anybody else. But when you pick up and you say, oh, I didn't realize that when I hit this button, that happens in your world. All of a sudden, now that person is like, thank you for recognizing that you have an impact on me. That's some degree of empathy and awareness. And so
Yeah.
I love the juxtaposition of those.
Well, thank you for taking all my divergent thoughts and making that.
Right, I was writing down what you were saying too, yeah, because we were getting there, yeah, really. Let me ask sort of I guess the final question, maybe it's not, but if I'm a woman and I'm in an organization and all companies are tech companies, and I feel like what I'm doing, whatever it is I'm doing, has kind of stopped and stalled.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a tough one, I know. What's the one thing I can do next week? We're recording this at the end of a week. What's the one thing I can do next week in all these things to sort of
Yeah.
get moving?
So if just to sort of restate that, so if I'm a woman, I'm in an organization, clock stalled straight, don't know what to do next. When you think about the life of a woman in corporate America, there is a lot that has weighed on that woman. Some of it might be their own things, like we talked about before, that they bring in. Some of it might be a daily grind, a daily cheese grater of being kind of coached to make yourself smaller, the daily biases, whatever it is, right? So it's like if you're stuck or stalled, and and there's also that you're in an organization, you might still be drinking that Kool-Aid, you haven't maybe looked too far out. It's like, I really think it's like for women need to find other healed women. And when I say this is something my business partner and I have been talking about. And I see this a lot with women who have been in the corporate environments for a really long time. And they are so conditioned, and that really bright women, that they don't even see themselves being in that conditioned state. And it's like, find someone who has shed the corporate and social conditioning. And when you do that, it's like, it's not about calling someone for advice on how do I navigate this environment that was never built for me. The conversation needs to go more to that healed person is going to help you remember who you were and who you are and who you can be under the right circumstances. And I think it's and I do this a lot. I don't even know that this is where conversations end up going, but it's like I had a woman recently, she was like a CIO -1, like one level beneath the CIO, did all the work, right? It's like she was a woman of color. There was this other, call him Joe, this other guy who was like her peer, had nowhere near the outcomes she did, didn't have the relationships. CIO announces that they're going to have, a search for replacing him because it's like it was a retirement. And she thinks she's in the running for this. And on merit, she should have been, right? She had all these business lines that were she had built all these relationships with. She had board relationships, all this kind of stuff. And this guy over here is kind of not really doing the work. She didn't get the job, right? She wasn't even in the running. This guy just got appointed for it. She didn't even get to interview for it. And now she's on the other side. She got a package, which that's great. And on the other side of this, she goes, well, I don't know how transparent I should be about the circumstances of me leaving. It's I need a reference still. I'm not sure. It's I had 2.5 years there, and I'm a little concerned about the tenure and all. She's still corporate conditioned, even though she's out of it. And I was At your level, do you think that somebody is going to call your old boss for a reference? I'm like, the reason you get a job is going to be someone vouched for you, someone introduced you, right? It's like everybody knows when you get to a certain level, it's like politics come into play and all these types of things. I'm like, you got a track record a mile long. It's like, lean into that. And I'm like, and you're worried about like 2.5 years on your resume when a CIO job is usually like turned over every 18 months. But she was so conditioned to like, she needed to manage these demerits she felt like, or these things she had to deal with. And it's like, and again, I sit there and I'm on the other side of this. It's like, I'm in this place where it's like, I see those things super clearly now. And it's like, I've now seen this woman a couple of times. She's like, I'm like, I just saw her last night. I'm like, how are things going? She goes, they're so much better. It all started with the conversation we had because I reminded her of how amazing she was.
Hmm.
And like, allowed her to be proud of that rather than shameful that she didn't get this job when the reason she didn't get it had nothing to do with her and everything to do with a system that was rigged against her, right? And it's like when you start to help people, I'm just going to say this, remember who the F they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Some beautiful things happen. Now, I would say much of corporate doesn't like a woman who knows who the F she is.
No, no.
We've got to stop thinking that's a woman problem. Right? It's like, anyway, so it's like advice to a woman whose career is stalled or unfulfilled or whatever, find another woman who is healed and has shed the corporate conditioning. Because if you go to one who's still in the conditioned state of what it's supposed to be as a female executive or to be a woman in society or to be whatever, you are going to get all sorts of advice like, well, it's time you better pick up golf and learn how to drink scotch.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a person who's on the other side of that is like going to be like, what do you love? What was great about your job? Who do you know? How can I help you? It's like, how do I help you live your truest, best next, whatever that is going to be, that you see the next opportunity clearly, right? That you choose someone who's going to value and sponsor and support you, right? And try and make better decisions. And again, it's like, you're like, well, I got to take what I'm offered or what, and it's like, in that kind of playing small thinking or and again, there's layers and layers of female conditioning where it's like, I've had so many people, I shouldn't say so many. I had a couple people in one organization because it was something that the organization would say, Andrea, when that light shines really bright on you, it casts a shadow on other people.
And you're like, what the hell does that mean? What have they conditioned you to think that is supposed to mean? Yeah.
So
I don't even know what the hell that means.
Dim that light. Dim that light. I had another woman recently tell me what she used to get told was, better put a lampshade on that because you're going to burn everybody around you. Right? It's like,
what man ever got told that? I'm sorry, Khalil. I know you feel.
No, listen, I've never been told that. But again, these are some of the things. And again, I realize, and I will just speak on behalf of some of the men, that there are times when people are like, no, nobody says that. No, that's not happening, right? Because you're not exposed to it. And the thing that we keep saying is when people tell you what's going on, listen. And Andrea, you've said this a number of times, be curious and don't say that's not happening. Say, when is that happening? At first say, I'm so sorry that happened. Try to better understand what are some of the things that I may be doing intentionally, unintentionally. What am I allowing to happen? Because what we keep talking about is the system. And if we keep assuming that like, no, nobody gets into accidents because I haven't seen any accidents on my way to work. It's like, well, you just didn't see them. They still happened all over the place. And so just to assume that I haven't been in one and therefore they don't happen to anybody else is ignorant. And it's not intentional in a lot of cases, but it is this willful ignorance almost that we have to figure out how we break out of. And I hope that someone hears this lampshade and light and says, what the hell is going on? Am I allowing that in my organization? Has anybody ever said that to somebody that reports to me? What can I do to suss some of this out and make sure that that's not happening around me? Because I want my people shining as bright as possible because light is not a zero-sum game. We keep talking about it. Everyone should be shining and we should be shining on one another. And we should be talking about, I love what you're doing over here. That's not supposed to take away from anybody else. And when you build an organization that says, kind of just keep your head down, do your job, just be quiet. People will tap you on the shoulder and tell you you're ready for the next thing. I think there's a big difference between saying, what about me? What about me? Ignore everyone else. And that goes to what you were talking about, which is pick your head up and understand the people around
Yeah.
you. But that doesn't mean pull yourself down. It means lift other people up.
Yep.
And that I just hope that someone else out there is having some of the same insights that I am. And I've been fortunate to work around a lot of incredible people that have shared their stories. These are the types of stories that I hope we continue to share, because I hope they create the insights necessary to motivate action, where people stop saying, no, that's not happening, and start saying, no, that should not be happening. And what am I going to do about it?
Yeah.
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 Andrea, thank you so much. I think this has been a great conversation. And, and Khalil and I are going to do sort of a wrap up and try to figure it out. But we got a lot to work on to make it wrap up, because this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. And I mean, thank you as woman to woman. Thank you, because we get so much. Do self-care, find a sister. We get that. We don't get what you just said. And so I personally want to thank you for saying it. And I think a lot of people are going to be, it's good for everybody, but I think women really need to hear what you said. So thank you for joining us on this one.
Yeah. When you get on the other side and you are a self intrinsically motivated person, like I've said this before, where it's like, I don't know, maybe I'm getting close to professional self-actualization, where my North Star and what I do every day, the way I do it, like the integrity I bring to it, like that has zero external drivers, right? That it's like, I am living from a place of knowing, I'm behaving from a place of knowing, I am unafraid to say it the way I want to. Like when you get like unleashed and the way it feels, and then you start to realize the way that is received by others. Like this is work I've done on myself for myself. And then you start to see the way others are like, because so many of us are around people with similarly difficult circumstances, right? So you kind of end up in these communities where it's like, dealing with the same challenge, or, woman executive here. And it's like, and then when you start to see, oh, and imagine what awesome could be, right? And I don't know, it's like it's just been such a great couple of years on being on this journey, on getting there, and then like having like the conversation with this woman that I did a couple of weeks ago, and then saw her yesterday, and she's like, I'm doing great since, because it's just this reframe, it's a change in narrative.
Yeah.
It's not selfish to love yourself. Like it is literally not selfish to love yourself.
Exactly.
Right? It's not selfish to be internally motivated by what's true to you. That is not selfish,
And
right?
if you don't
But
love yourself,
again,
it's not
there's
wrong to figure out
packaging
why you
that's
don't.
come from centuries of cultural indoctrination and all sorts of stuff about what it means to be a woman and what we need to do to self-sacrifice for everybody around us and all this stuff. And you start to shed it and you're like, awesome.
Well, thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We've got, as Janet said, a lot to package and wrap up, and we look forward to these conversations continuing to happen. And thank you for sharing what that professional self-actualization can look like and feel like, because I think you've given a lot of us something to continue to strive for.
Awesome. Thank you both. Have an awesome weekend.
You
It's been
too.
so much fun.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Khalil, that was a wonderful session that we had with Andrea. I took a lot from it. And as we always do, now is the time to say, well, what stood up for us most? What are the kind of three big takeaways? And I would say that one of them is really in the title, that every company is a tech company. We talked a lot about the tech industry, but at the end of the day, there's no company doing any work now or 24 months from now that is not going to have to understand, lean into, and deal with technology.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Janet, I know one of the ones that clearly jumped out at both of us, because we were nodding our heads back and forth, was the put your head down and pick your head up, right? This idea of doing the work on yourself as an individual, that self-awareness and kind of, understanding your motivations and your challenges, and then picking your head up and looking at the network and the connections and the context around you.
Absolutely. And sort of summing that together, we know what I was shaking my head on. It was towards the end where she said, find someone healed. And she was talking specifically to women, but that thing of find somebody who can tell you who the F you are, that's exactly true. We get told as women and as people so much, we get a lot of woo-woo stuff. To me, that was the thing that you can do tomorrow, because whether you've built a network or not, you start by finding that person and having the conversation. So I came away from this with a whole lot of stuff that I could do. I think everybody did. And it's not just for women, but it's especially for women. But I think with all the chaos we have coming, I think she gave us some really good ways to think about what to do now.
Agreed.
Thanks for joining us on In This Moment. Find today's resources at inthismoment.network and connect with us on LinkedIn. And if this was valuable, subscribe and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcast. It helps other leaders find us. Stay ready for what's next.